Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I am delighted to be here with you. The idea behind my show is really to pay homage to humankind. It's to point out through inspirational interviews the things in life that we have developed, that we have created, often together as a group, sometimes as individual, and the beauty that exists within our world. And I think it's appropriate to say that writing, or perhaps writers, really have lent a lot to a positive world, to a positive existence. We all have our favorite novelists. We all have our favorite non-fiction writers. And the idea of sitting down and reading a book, a novel, an article by someone who's a really, really powerful and good writer, it just kind of puts you in that place for a moment. You know, you focus on what they're writing about, and sometimes it's about sports. Well, I became a bit more conscious of sports writing recently for my podcast. I thought that would be a good idea. And an individual whom I came across is a sports writer, mostly about the Leafs, but not exclusively so, by the name of Luke Fox. And he is my guest today. How are you, Luke?
I'm doing good, Avrum. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you, man. Luke is a veteran sports journalist and managing digital editor at Sportsnet, focusing on NHL coverage, particularly in Toronto Maple Leafs. With over 15 years of experience, he is a respected figure in hockey journalism, known for his insightful analysis and engaging storytelling. So I took a look at a few excerpts from some of your articles, and I'd just like to read one or two just to really make my point about how I know I don't watch my own podcasts. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. So here's one, okay? The Air Canada Centre was a cauldron of hope and dread, the kind of night where every puck battle felt like a referendum on a decade of dreams. Ooh, powerful line. Craig Berube, who's the coach of the Leafs, stood behind the bench, arms crossed, his stare as unyielding as the defensive system he drilled into the Maple Leafs. I'm going to read more of this stuff later, but that's just to give you a sense of Luke Fox and how he writes. So are you well read in fiction?
I should be more well read. I used to be well read, and I've found myself using my spare time to do my own writing more than reading. I love reading, but it's kind of gotten away from me a little bit. But as a kid, I was a voracious reader, and through my teenage years. And I feel like now I'm just, trying to pay bills and, do errands and spend time with my kids and occasionally golf. So I don't read as much as I'd like to. When I get a vacation, I love to crush a book though.
Yes.
But day to day, I wish I could do a bit more, but I find myself focusing a little bit more on my own writing now. It's funny, like you read that and I don't even remember writing that.
Yeah.
Because it's like a daily grind, and you write something and then it's gone and you're thinking about the next thing. So it's weird. Sometimes I'll read something back and I don't even remember doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wrote a commentary for the Canadian Jewish News for many years, and I would do it on a weekly basis. Generally, what I would do is I would write down ideas for articles, so I was somewhat prepared when I had to start writing. But I do remember there were many weeks, Luke, where I thought, Jesus, man, I can't put out another commentary, 600 words. It's too much. But how much do you write? How often?
I'd say I probably average 5 to 7 pieces a week.
Whoa.
Like on game days, sometimes they want a story to set up the game and then following the game. And then like in playoffs, it's probably 3 stories every 2 days. Like it's a lot. And I never used to do that. I used to really labor over every article I wrote, because I've been doing this for a while. But and at first I resisted the quantity, but I became less precious about it. It's just like, that's the best I can do in an hour or an hour and a half. Let it go. And if it's not that great, I'll get it next time because there's another assignment coming.
Right. But let me ask you this. There are some fine phrases in your writing. The Maple Leafs power play, once a symphony of crisp passes and laser shots, became a dirge in the 2025 playoffs. That's a thoughtful line. Does that come really quickly to you nowadays? Or do you ever sit and say, how can I write this phrase in a powerful way?
No, it comes quick. I think it's just I'm always kind of thinking about things, thinking about, like, right now when I was on the Leafs, I'll be on the Leafs. In pretty shortly, I'm going to be heading off to cover the Cup final, and when I'm on an assignment, I'm kind of always thinking about those teams or their problems or what they do great. So when it comes time to write, I've already done a lot of thinking, and it usually just comes. And I don't do a lot of rewriting or editing of my stuff. I kind of just get it out there and hit send it to the desk.
Do you have to be very careful as a writer to maintain a balance between a relationship with the players' management versus your readership? Can you say something about a player that could be construed as, I don't know, not very fair, not very nice, but and then have a relationship with the player afterwards?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Like, you don't want it's funny because I think about some people that do like talk radio, that they can say something maybe a little bit harsher or have like an aggressive take on things sometimes, but they don't have to get up the next morning, walk into the dressing room and look that person in the eye, right?
Yes.
As a beat writer, and I'm not the only one, but us beat writers, we're around the team almost every day, unless it's an off day. We go to the practices, we go to the morning skates after the game. So we're seeing these athletes multiple times a week. So I try to be honest, but I try to be fair. Like, I never get personal. But if someone's in a slump, you're not doing the readership any favors by ignoring it or glossing over it. But it is something I'm constantly thinking about. Is this fair to the player? Is this fair to the reader? Am I telling the full stories? And I try to be as fair as possible. But I like to point out, like, there's only so many times you can say that Austin Matthews is a great hockey player. Everyone knows that he's great. But if he hasn't scored in 10 games, why is that? Let's look into it. And I know some people. There are some fans that are kind of just like, they just want to hear good stuff. They don't want you to be too critical. But I try to find that balance, and sometimes I don't. But I try my best to be fair.
Have you become friends?
I wouldn't say friends. I wouldn't say friends. Friendly for sure. They're 20-something multi-millionaires, right? They don't want to be hanging out with an old sports writer. But for sure, friendly, and it depends on the athlete too. There's certain athletes that will, they just want it to be a transaction of, I give you my post-game quotes or my thoughts on the penalty kill, and that's it. And others, will be a bit more conversational with you, and you feel like you're talking to a real human. So yeah, I mean, definitely friendly, but friends, no, we're not hanging out in our spare time.
So I see the Leafs, let's say specifically,
yeah,
really any elite athlete, as warriors. When they walk in, hockey night in Canada or whatever, we'll often make every effort of showing them walking in really dressed nicely. They have huge necks, right? They're really, really built well. They hold themselves high. You can see that they have a lot of physical and mental respect for themselves. Have you gotten over that awe?
Yes,
You
100%.
have.
But when I first had this job, and before I did this, I did a lot of music writing, and I always admired musicians as well. And for sure, I would like be nervous the first few times, and there was awe is a perfect word. Like you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to upset this person. I want to ask the right question, and I'm in admiration of their talent because they could do something on a hockey rink that I could never dream of doing.
Yeah.
Like, so you have that respect, but after a while you see them enough. It's like anything. You see someone enough and you realize they're just people. So yes, they're extraordinarily talented, and they'll make more in a week than I will in probably a decade. But they're just people, and people have problems, and they have bad days and good days. And, some are chattier than others, and some are a little bit more reserved. And so, yeah, that the awe is worn off for sure.
Have you spent any time with people like Gordie Howe, rest in peace, Bobby Orr, Wayne Gretzky? What is that like?
Yeah. Well, you're talking about awe. For me, like Wayne Gretzky was my hero when I was a kid. Gordie Howe, was this mythical figure. Like my dad loved him. So getting those are awe-filled moments. I got to meet Dr. J. So yeah, for sure. I was at a luncheon before Gordie passed, and I got to meet him, and I have a photo of me with him that I still display prominently in my house. Like it was just the nicest man. I think I met him 3 times, and my uncle was a Red Wings fan, and I got him to sign his book, and so that was really cool. And one time, I've never forgotten this. So he was it was like a charity hockey tournament, and there was people just hanging out at a rink, having lunch or whatever between games. And Gordie walked into this whatever, like rink cafeteria area. He was just walking through, and everyone who was there stood up and applauded.
Really?
Like this spontaneous standing ovation for old Gordie. It was one of the coolest scenes, and I'll never forget it. But he was the nicest man. He'd always have a joke, and it was really cool. And yeah, I had a sit down interview with Bobby Orr. That was a real thrill.
Yeah.
Early in my days in Sportsnet, he was promoting his book. I don't know, maybe that was 8 years ago. And I got a one-on-one for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes with Bobby. And, then I was nervous. Like I wrote down all my questions. Sometimes I just ask questions that pop into my head, but I wrote prepared questions, and that was a great experience for sure.
Well, what might be a very unique question? You want to be different when you're unique question for Bobby.
I asked what rule he would change if he could change the modern game. Yeah. And he said he hated the trapezoid. He really thought goalies should just be able to go wherever they want. If they want to take the risk of going out, that's on them. So yeah, I had a really good conversation with Bobby. I think I asked him who should be in the Hall of Fame that isn't too, and he said Paul Henderson.
He said Paul Henderson.
Yeah, and I agree.
Surprising that he's not. Why wouldn't he be?
Because he doesn't have the individual stats, right, over a career. It's more of the moment. But I feel like that moment is so big that he probably deserves inclusion because, it's like one of the greatest moments in hockey history.
So the moment you're speaking of is?
The Summit Series.
Yeah. Russia versus Canada.
Yeah.
What year were you born?
December 76. So that was, I don't remember that moment, but I just remember seeing old footage of it. Yeah.
Do you remember the Broad Street Bullies? Do you remember when Philly was like the fighters that they were?
Yeah. I mean, that predated me watching hockey, but I'm very aware and saw little clips. I was a kid, and it was like Gretzky Oilers versus the Islanders dynasty. Those are kind of like my earliest memories of watching hockey that are ingrained in me were those series.
You must have been over the top. I mean, I'm speculating here on when you became a sports writer, focusing a lot on the Leafs. It must have been an incredible time for you, right?
Yeah, yeah. I try not to take it for granted. I mean, I've had a bunch of jobs, and this is my favorite one. That's for sure. Um, you know, like this year, I got to cover the Four Nations, which was a highlight. I really hope I get to cover the Winter Games. I've never covered an Olympics. I was supposed to go to Beijing, and then the NHL pulled out. So Sportsnet pulled me out and said, "No, I don't think we're gonna send a writer if there's no NHLers there." So fingers crossed for Italy next February, because nothing beats best on best in my mind.
Yes.
But I've got to cover a handful of cups, and that has been amazing. Like, they let reporters on to the ice to interview the winning team, and it's chaos, and their families are out there, and the cups out there, and people are taking photos with it, and all the pretense that athletes normally have, the cliches, that's all gone because there's no more games to play. They're riding a high. It's one of their greatest moments of their lives. So they're free and happy to talk. Usually short interviews, and it's kind of a mess. It's not organized. Like, you're running around chewed up ice and dress shoes trying to get these guys' attention.
Yeah.
And they're trying to be polite to you, give you an interview, but they also want to hug their dad and share that, moment of winning the cup. But just being around that euphoria is something it's a career highlight. So, and I've got to do that a few times, and I'll get to do it again towards the end of June here. So yeah, no, it's living the dream. Like, as a writer who loves sports and gets to do this, I don't take it for granted.
Are you able to do nice things, let's say, for your kids, close family members? Someone might say to you, can you do me a favor, man? Can you get me Matthew's autograph? Can you do that stuff?
Yeah, no. I get that. I get those requests. I get a lot of people thinking that I have access to free tickets or cheap tickets, and that is not the case. There's a clear line between church and state. Yeah, it's
in this case,
it's a
yes.
job. Now, one thing I did get to do, and it was really awesome. So the Leafs were having when they first started the next generation game, where they're kind of pitching it to kids, and had a bit of earlier start time right before Christmas. My son was, I want to say he was 7 or 8. And I pitched my editor, because it's the next generation game, can my kid write my game story for me?
Yeah.
And he liked that idea. So I was grateful. The Leafs gave my kid a press pass, and it was like, take your son to work day. So he got the whole experience. And then afterwards, I have a photo of, he sat down in the dressing room and had a one-on-one with Mitch Marner. And I made him wear a suit. I made him prepare his questions. I taught him how to use the recorder. And I helped clean up his grammar, but I kind of just wrote his comments and his thoughts of the game, and then helped him transcribe his interview with Mitch. And that was the game story. So that was one kind of perk, I guess. But there's strict rules. No photos, no asking for autographs. Heaven forbid, ask for a stick or a puck. No, it's a workplace.
Like a father who would be watching his kid play net, and I've seen a lot of crazy parents whose kids are goalies. Were you nervous when he did the interview with Marner?
A little bit more. I think more proud than nervous.
Yeah.
But yeah. And he was a confident little kid, so he wasn't shy about it. But yeah, it was cool.
Good for you, man. Good for you. Marner seems like a really happy, warm human being. I like the way he hugs the goalies at the end of the games.
Yeah, he's an energetic guy. He has a lot of joy, and it's unfortunate, I think, that his relationship with the fan base, or a portion of the fan base, has become kind of fractured. And it's crazy, because you think this hometown kid who grew up loving the Leafs, dreaming of being a Leaf, then played incredible for them, it would have a happy ending. And it looks like we're not heading towards that, that. And it's not, I mean, it's not all bad. Like, he's going to go off and he's going to be great somewhere else probably. And the Leafs will figure out other players to bring in with his cap space. But it is too bad that, he's in an alternate universe, he retires a Leaf. There's a statue of him and it all ends happy. And instead it's kind of messy.
Do you ever detect the pain that the Leafs or hockey players would go through because of such an ending?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, there's certainly disappointment. You feel that frustration for sure. But at the same time, I think these guys, and I think it's partly why they've gotten to where they have. They're very much able to say, okay, I got to flip the switch and start training and getting better for next year. And I think the high level elite athlete thinks differently than the fan does. And I think sometimes the fans find that hard to relate to because their minds work a little bit differently. But I really feel like that they'll be bummed for a while, but they are able to flip that switch and say, okay, I got to do this, and this. I'll take a little break, but then I got to do all these things to get better for next year and work on my stride or work on my release or whatever it is. And they come back at it.
But I mean, you take a look at this year's playoffs. The Leafs get into they beat Ottawa. They get into the second series with Florida. They're up 2-0. They lose that. It goes all the way to 7. And you literally see, and I don't know if I'm reading this correctly, so this is really my question to you. You'll see a very down bench. You don't see that great energy as you would on the other side at Florida and so on. So I hear what you're saying about flipping the switch, but human emotions would dictate that these guys, there's a lot of pressure on them. And there's probably a certain amount of, damn, I want to do this for Toronto finally, and we're not doing it.
Yeah, and I think they want to do it for themselves too, right? Like 9 years in, the core guys, and it always ends earlier than they want it to. For sure, they feel it in that moment, and I think you could see it maybe after Florida scored the second time. Like, it already, the mountains seemed too high at that point, just because Florida's so good. And I think when you're playing against a team that is as organized as the Panthers are and as vicious and relentless, you kind of know. I mean, it's like anything. It doesn't even have to be professional sports. Like, I play beer league, and there's times the other team's going to win. Like, you're just like, they got us. And I'm sure that crosses their mind. And then they think about all the work they did in the off season, training camp, 82 regular season games. You do all that just to get to that point. And then when you feel it slipping away, of course it's going to be hard. It's hard. It'd be inhuman not to wear it on your face or in your body language at that point.
When the series was over, and it did go 7 games, and we have to give them credit for that. I was watching the commentators after the game, the Ron McLeans and so on. Their heads were hanging, and there was this sense, not so much of anger, but more of, damn, I feel bad for those guys.
Yeah.
And I tell you, my heart went out to Mitch, to Matthews, to the coach, to every single second, third, fourth line, all of which were reasonable lines this year, I would say. But how were you feeling when Game 7 was over? What did you emotionally? How did you?
Me?
Respond? Yeah, how did you feel?
Oh, I don't know. It's like that's go time for work. So I'm kind of like, I'm like, I can't believe they let it slip again. I was stunned. I wasn't surprised that they lost because the Panthers are a good team. But I was a little bit surprised, and maybe I shouldn't have been, in the manner that they lost. Like, just, without much pushback, with a really lopsided score. crowd getting ugly at home. It felt a little bit surreal. So yeah, I was a little bit stunned by just the enormity of it all, like the jerseys getting thrown on the ice,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
beers getting tossed, some fans going up to the glass and giving the middle finger. Like it was uglier than I had imagined. And it made me feel bad for them, but it also made me feel bad for the fans that, because the fans are really invested in this team and they're disappointed again. So yeah, I empathize with the fans, feel a bit bad for the players, but in terms of my emotions, I'm kind of just trying to think like, okay, what questions do I got to ask? I'm starting to write in my head a little bit. Like that's like the go time for work, because you rush down the elevator and you rush into the room to interview them, and you got to kind of be on your A game right away.
My father was a rabbi,
Mm.
and when somebody would pass away in the community, he jumped to life.
Yeah.
He wasn't as dad, this person died. It's really sad. He goes, yeah, I know, but we need to prepare for the funeral.
Yeah.
You
He
know what
goes
I mean?
into action. He
goes into
action.
action.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So, Luke, I have this theory about the Leafs that the reason why they have failed to go to the Cup for so many years, since 1967, is because of the Canadian mentality in general. I see myself as an individual, a Canadian, born here, 1960 in Kitchener, Ontario, and I watch other people. I'm a purveyor of life. And I see that in Canada, we don't have the zest and the incredible drive that the Americans have. We're much more like this. And I see very often in my day-to-day work that I can have a sort of a laissez-faire attitude to what I'm doing. So my mental state goes up and down. Sometimes I'm very excited about it. Sometimes I just, well, okay, that's enough. And I'm wondering if you think there's anything valid to that. My question to you is, deep down inside, the wee hours of the night, when you're thinking about our dear Toronto Maple Leafs and why we haven't had a Stanley Cup in this city since 1967, is it the mental state of the team overall? Is it a lack of talent? Is it a lack of management? Where do you go with this question?
I don't think it's one thing. I certainly don't think it's a lack of talent. I do think there was a mental block for sure in games 5 and 7 in particular at home. I think it's management's fault for keeping the core together as long as they did. Like 9 tries with Riley, Nylander, Matthews, and Marner. 7 of those with Tavares. And I think there was enough evidence that the mix wasn't right. And, this is why we saw Brendan Shanahan let go, is because there was a bit of a stubbornness towards the end to like keep throwing the same guys at the problem. And then it's like the same guys didn't get it done. Like, at what point are you not surprised? At what point do you have to try something new? And in saying that, I don't want that to come across as these guys aren't good hockey players or Mitch doesn't go somewhere else and win a cup. I mean, it's just in this city with this group, that combination, they had to change it, and they were slow to react. I think they were slow to change the coach. They probably should have moved on from Keefe earlier than they did. Slow to change the management and slow to change the core. Like you have to get some new blood, some new ideas in there, and that they framed it as loyalty and we believe in these guys, but at some point, if you show up at training camp, you're looking across and you're looking in the eyes of the same guy that didn't get it done, and you didn't get it done. Like, I think that starts to affect you mentally. So you fall behind in an important game. I think it would be human nature to say, "Uh-oh, are we going to lose it again?" And then as soon as you start thinking like that, you're toast. So I do think there was a mental block in those games.
Okay, I hear you, but I want to push you further on this.
Sure.
Okay, because we've had really great regular seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
really great regular seasons. And then when you see the top four and go into the second, third, fourth line, which I think were pretty reasonable this year, the greatest symphony of the Toronto Maple Leafs is sometimes on their power play, the way they control the puck. And they'll get over to Matthews, and there he is with that one-off, boom, top of the net, right? So their regular seasons are outstanding. But within that, I hear what you're saying. There's new blood required, but go back 58 years, that argument has always been said, and we're still not bringing it home. Why not?
Well, I mean, the opposition has a say. And I think when you spend a disproportionate amount of your cap dollars on so few guys, 4 or 5 guys, then you have to find bargains down the rest of the lineup, and you're pinching pennies there a little bit. And if those guys don't come up for you, then it's hard to gain an advantage. You're putting too much pressure on just a few guys to get it done. And it's not basketball where they can stay out the whole game. They got to come off. And, Florida's third line, which had Lundell, Marchand, and Luosterainen, they just totally outclassed Toronto's third line.
Yeah.
So if that's happening down in the lower part of the lineup, which is fair because Florida's third line, they've invested more money and they're better players. So that's fine. Then you really have to win the top 6, and they didn't. So, there's lots of reasons. That power play you're talking about, it went ice cold when they needed it most. They couldn't score enough goals when they needed
Why?
them.
But why?
Why?
Why did it go ice cold?
They didn't get it done. I think part of it's mental. I think part of it is Matthews was a little bit hurt. I think Florida's really good defensively, and they have a goalie that's headed to the Hall of Fame. There's multiple reasons. Because this keeps happening, like at some point you need to make a change.
And people are at a loss, Luke. I don't know if you agree with me on this or not. When you hear all the commentators and Steve Dangle and all these guys, you ever listen to Steve Dangle?
Yeah, Steve's a buddy of mine. He's very entertaining. He's very good at what he does. He'd probably hate to hear this. I only kind of watch him when things go really south. So like I watched him after game 7. Just I kind of want to see him at his absolute most frustrated, is furious.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He freaks out and he's so dramatic, right? He's outstanding at what he does. But all of them, honestly, did not seem to have an answer. It was more of I just don't know. I just can't figure this out.
Well, they have the high-end talent, and that's supposed to be the hardest thing to get, right? Like the Matthews era still has 3 more years left on his current contract. So the window's still there, but it's going to be really sad for Leaf fans if we look back and say, you know what, think about all those guys we had and we never got deep. It's gonna feel like a really big missed opportunity. And what I'm worried about is for Toronto is the best opportunities may have already passed. Like I think of that Canadian division where they played Montreal in the first round and we're up 3-1, and there wasn't a lot of scary looking teams on that side of the bracket. And then I look at this year, you look at how easily Florida's handling Carolina right now. And I totally believe if the Maple Leafs had found a way to win one more game against Florida, that they would beat Carolina as well and go to a cup. So the opportunities, like they go by like this, and we might look back and say that their best ones have already passed them.
Sad to think of. I also think that, in my humble opinion, that this city would do so well with the second hockey team.
In that, sir, we are in agreement 100%.
Yes. Why is that?
Yeah. Why would it do well with a second hockey team?
Yes. Why do you think? Yes.
Oh, just because fans can't even get in the building. The tickets are always sold out. It's so expensive. I think it would be great to have some competition in the market. You look at New York. The New York area has 3 hockey teams. Yes. they have no trouble supporting 2 baseball teams. Like, to think Greater Toronto area couldn't support 2 hockey teams is a joke. I think it's just the Leafs. The Leafs don't want the competition, and the NHL right now doesn't want any more teams in Canada because of the soft dollar. Like, all their efforts on expanding are like Atlanta. They're looking at Houston. They want to grow in the States. If anything, I'm a little bit worried about the Winnipeg Jets. Now, on the ice, they're fantastic, but they're struggling a little bit because there's not a lot of corporate money in Winnipeg. So I'm a little bit worried, if anything, Canada could go down to 6 teams earlier than they go up to 8. But there's no question in my mind that the Toronto market, there's enough money and enough love for the game that they could support a team. And I think it would be really cool. Like, you could have could be like the hipster team where, younger fans are like, oh, I'm not cheering for Leafs. I'm cheering for whatever they're called. And it's kind of like, that was my dad's team. I'm going to be different. I'm going to, cheer for the expansion team. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah. And I think there's more than that. I think that the pressure on the Toronto Maple Leafs as likely the biggest feeder city in the world for hockey. We always say the most interest in the world, and that may or may not be true, but hockey here is so local to our DNA that the pressures must be insurmountable for these guys very often. And I think if there was another team here, that would alleviate some of the pressure.
It might,
I also think, Luke, that the price of tickets would have to come down.
Yeah, because they have a monopoly. They can charge whatever they want. So whenever I talk to Leaf fans, I encourage them. It's great you love the Leafs. Don't buy a ticket in Toronto. Go on a road trip. You could get, for the price you pay for a ticket at Scotiabank Arena, you could get on a flight or get some buddies and pile into a vehicle or two. Go to Columbus, go to Pittsburgh, fly down to Tampa. There are so many, Nashville, like, there's so many great cities you could take in a Leaf game, and the atmosphere is usually a little bit better. Then it's an adventure, and your tickets will actually be cheaper. And I run it because I follow the team around. I stay at these hotels, and so often you see traveling Leaf fans at the hotel you're staying at, and they're always like having a blast, having a time. Right. And I'm a little bit jealous because I'm in a suit. I'm going to work, and these guys are getting tuned up to, just a boys trip, or you see families bringing the kids, and it's like that's a great way to experience a sport live, is go somewhere else and watch your team play on the road.
Would you take your family on a hockey excursion, or is that like a busman's vacation?
Well, I do sometimes. So last couple Christmases, I've had to cover the Leafs in Buffalo, and I bought my kids tickets, and I'm working, but my son and my daughter sit together and watch the game. Yeah. And they free hotel room, right? So,
which is cool, right?
Yeah.
Do you get stuff out of the fridge? Do you take anything out of the fridge?
Out of the what? The mini bar?
The mini bar, yeah.
No, not usually, no.
Because it's so damn expensive. In your suggestion to friends or buddies or whatever to go on a trip, I think, which is a great idea. Would you suggest them as well to do that with the Sabres in Buffalo?
Yeah. I mean, Leaf fans take over Buffalo. It feels like a home game. Probably Buffalo's number one, and then second would be Ottawa. In the regular season, there's a lot of Leaf fans that go to Ottawa.
Yes,
and they kind of take over, and it was well over 50% in the regular season. So when the Senators were playing the Leafs in the playoffs, I was really impressed by the Sens fans, because I thought, oh, here come the Leaf fans. They're going to make every game of this series feel like a home game for Toronto. And that wasn't the case. The Sens fans turned out en masse.
Yeah.
They were loud. The building was rocking. There were a few Leaf fans there for sure, but not nearly the percentage I predicted. And I was impressed. Like, it had been 8 years since the Sens had been to the postseason, and their fans were loyal and loud and came up with unique chants. And they turned out. So, but in the regular season, Ottawa, Buffalo, there's lots of places where Leaf fans can kind of take over.
It was a nice series too with Ottawa.
Yeah.
It was good hockey,
It was fun.
right?
Yeah.
I want to see how well you know your history when it comes to hockey writing
Oh,
and broadcasting. Can you name any writers or broadcasters in the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs, someone whom you really looked up to?
well, I would say no. I mean, Bob Cole,
Bob
like
Cole.
I loved, listening, but to be honest, I wasn't like a big reader of Leaf stuff because I wasn't a Leafs fan growing up. I loved hockey, and but my go-to was Sports Illustrated. Like I subscribed to that when I was, I don't know, maybe 11 years old. And that probably carried through 12, 13 years. I would get it in the mailbox and
Yeah.
read it, almost everything. And so I loved Michael Farber's hockey writing. I was a big Rick Riley guy. Steve Russian. Like I really liked some of the Gary Smith, like a lot of the Sports Illustrated authors. That's what I was into. And that's no offense. It's just I wasn't a big, like, I'm picking up the Toronto Star and reading about the Leafs every day. It was
Yeah.
more just in general. I loved good sports writing.
Remember the swimsuit edition?
Yes. And I remember my mom getting upset that it would arrive at our house. Yeah.
Right,
I
right.
was like, it's part of the subscription. What am I going to do?
You'll put that away now, son. So listen, I just want to mention a few of the greats. Foster Hewitt, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
1895 to 1985. You would have been young when he passed away. Did you ever meet him?
No, before my time.
Yeah, of
But
course.
yeah, I remember the iconic voice from
Voice of the Maple Leafs. That's what they call
for
him,
sure,
right?
sure. Yeah,
Frank Orr, sports journalist.
yeah. I know the name,
I believe
but I mean,
Neil
I
Young.
didn't.
Yeah, I think it was Neil Young's dad, Frank, right?
Oh, was he?
I believe so.
Oh,
Orr covered the Maple Leafs for six decades, primarily for the Toronto Star. His insightful reporting and storytelling chronicled the team's highs, like the 1960 dynasty, and the lows, the post-1967 drought. So that's an interesting question. Does it get tedious for you that you can never write about that Stanley Cup and the Toronto Maple Leafs? Is that difficult?
I wouldn't say it's difficult because I'm happy to write about the Stanley Cup if the Oilers win it or the Panthers win it again. Like there's always stories to find. I do think it would be awesome, to be on the beat covering a team that wins the cup for sure.
Yes.
Because you've been there for their whole journey. You're not just dropping in for that series, like, so like I remember I covered the Avalanche Cup, but the couple people who had been with the Avalanche for years, it was a really big deal for those writers, right? Because they knew these guys the best, they could write more insightful stuff because they had been there every step of the way. They weren't just dropping into that series and covering those 6 games. So I think it would be awesome to be able to chronicle Toronto finally breaking the curse and winning the cup. But I don't get emotionally tied to that not happening.
Did you ever write about characters as well, or mostly just the play-by-play? Like Ty Domi's an interesting fellow. Would you ever write a piece about
I
him?
had a long interview with him. This was years ago. Max was with the Coyotes still, and Ty was pushing a book, and I had like a hour-long conversation with him, and it was one of my favorite interviews, actually. I'll try and dig it up and send it to you. It was very wide-ranging about his career, and I really enjoyed him because he's a very opinionated guy as well. He doesn't bite his tongue. But for sure, no, I do profiles. Right. I've had long Q&As with different guys. One of my favorites was talking to Willie O'Ree. A little bit before he started getting some shine in terms of the jersey retirement and getting his own award and stuff. And he was a bit of a lost figure. Probably didn't get enough shine. And it was one of my first really long interviews I did when I got the Sportsnet job. So I cherished doing a big profile on him. And yeah, for sure. For sure. It's not just games. It's not just game
Man, you have
stuff.
a great
I actually, I want the fans, as much as they'll allow me to, get across that these are people and that there's different things about them, and
yes.
try to give as much insight as possible. And part of that's on the athlete too. Like, some are more comfortable opening up and telling you little anecdotes or opinions, and others, and that's their right, just want to keep it to how's the power play doing.
Did you speak to Salming,
No,
Boreas
sadly,
Salming at all?
no.
Do you
Oh
know
yeah,
anything
yeah,
about
yeah. And I
him
mean,
from the inside?
I've written about him, through the eyes of the current Leafs. I was there when he came out to drop the puck shortly before he passed, and
Yes.
but no, I never.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I never got the pleasure of meeting him. But yeah, he was one of my dad's favorite players, and I remember as a kid, he was the man, right? Every Saturday night. Yeah.
That picture of Daryl Sittler standing next to him on the ice,
Yeah.
sobbing because he knew what was coming. I think that's one of the probably most recent powerful pictures to come out of the Leafs.
Yeah.
Very sad. When Salming passes away or a Leaf gets very sick or something, is your relationship such that it affects you emotionally? Would you get teary-eyed when someone gets sick or passes away?
I guess it depends if I've actually met them, and you know, uh, I'm trying to think, like, I was a big like, I really liked Mike Bossy, and I found that,
Yes.
when he passed away a couple years, was it a year ago or 2 years ago? Yeah, that one like really hit hard, because he was like one of my heroes when I was a kid. So I guess it depends on the person, and how, you know, how much I either loved them as a kid or had actually met them and dealt with them. Now that I've been, face to face interviewing hockey players for whatever it is, almost 15 years, I'm sure there'll be more and more of that, right? As guys get older. Yeah.
I think there's a piece of it when, as I said, I was born in 1960. So I
Mm,
remember Johnny Bauer and I remember Terry Sawchuk, these maskless goalies, going out there and fighting a war, not just a battle, but a war. And when Johnny Bauer died, the first thought that occurred to me is, okay, so that part of my childhood
yeah.
really is
Yeah.
over. They'll never be putting Johnny in the net again,
Yeah.
right? So it's an interesting reflection on how we view sports. We grow up with these guys. We grew up with the
Mm-hmm.
team, right?
Yeah. No, you feel like you know them, even if you don't really. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, very
And
much
it's
so.
probably also, when your heroes start to pass, it probably reminds you that you're getting a little closer to the end too, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. How
I'm
old are you now,
48.
Luke?
Yeah.
48. Yeah, the traveling to the different cities,
Yeah.
staying in different hotels and so on. Are you still cool with that? Are you still okay
Depends
with
on the
that?
day. But yeah, no, I love it. It was really exciting early on. It's like, oh, first time in Vegas, first time in Nashville, first time, work covering
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Blackhawks in Chicago. Some of that, just like the awe of meeting the players, wears off. Some of the luster of going to the cities around the 32 teams wears off a little bit. But I still like, trying to find a good restaurant at the place, or, sometimes you get in the night earlier, and I've gotten to go to Fenway because the Red Sox are in town before I cover Leafs Bruins, or, I went to a Dallas Mavericks game recently because they were playing before, the Leafs were playing the Stars, and I was in a night earlier. So like stuff like that, I try to take advantage of. But there's an old sports writer saying that, you don't get paid to write, you get paid to travel. Like the writing's the easy part. The sitting and you getting a notification that your flight's been delayed for a third straight time, and you got a connection through Newark, and your wife's like, "Why aren't you home?" I'm losing my mind with the kids. Like that's the tough part. Yeah.
So that's an interesting point that you bring up. I also wonder very often is like, how is the wife and how are the kids with dad? Like, I got to go to Chicago, son, or, honey, I
Yeah.
need to go down to Florida, or this is going to be a while, this series. Do they know that's what's going to happen? Do they get used
I
to it? How
think
do they
I think they're
respond to
getting
your
more
life?
used to it, but it's certainly a challenge. Certainly a challenge. I don't like telling my son that I got to go to a Leaf game and not his game. I'd rather be in
Yes.
the stands watching him.
Yes.
But, I chose this job, and I don't think I would travel. I was saying this. I don't think I would travel as much if he was younger. So he's in grade 9 now. But if he was in diapers or something, I probably wouldn't be doing this. I'd probably be writing, but not traveling as much. But the travel fuels me. Like I want to feel invested. I want to be around the team. I want to tell the story firsthand, not just from the TV.
Does your son get creds for who you are?
His buddies,
What you
do? His buddies ask him stuff. Yeah, like it's funny. Like
Do they?
he loves playing hockey. He's kind of medium on asking me about the Leafs and stuff, but he'll have friends over and they'll pepper me with questions like, "What's Austin really like?" or who's getting traded.
Yeah,
They want to
right.
know, like, they want to know the inside stuff. But he has other interests too. He's like a movie nut, and yeah,
Is
he's a
he?
bit of a cinephile. Yeah, like he'll go back and watch old movies, and but yeah. So I don't know. We could do a deep dive into psychology. Maybe he's not super into the Leafs because it takes his dad away. There might be
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he loves the sport. He loves playing the sport. So that's a good thing.
Are you a good dad?
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
Yeah. You think so?
Yeah. Well, what happens is because I'm away, it's almost like you're trying to make up for lost time. So when you are home, you're like really engaged with the kids, and yeah. But the good thing is I'm on the hockey schedule. So I'm almost like on a teacher's schedule. I get summers off because I work so much overtime through the winter. So the summers are where I can be a better dad for sure. Yeah.
Good for you, man. Good for you. Just a couple general questions about hockey. Something that I've always wondered about. Um, I'm sensitive. I'm sort of overly sensitive very often about things I shouldn't be sensitive about. But I always feel a deep sense of melancholy when I see many athletes, let's say Leafs, retire. I looked at Wayne Gretzky, and quite frankly, I didn't think he retired very well. I think he's only now coming into his own once again. And I asked myself, here's a guy who's called the Great One. Let's say his greatest hockey in history, and I would say he was. And all of a sudden, that thing that he loved so much, that he's so passionate about, that he lived and breathed, that he was raised on, it's in his DNA. It's gone. He will never accomplish what he accomplished on ice, likely, again, because he was the best at it. Do you have experience or knowledge? What happens to a lot of these guys after they retire? Are they generally okay, or is it like a super big struggle?
I think it depends, but I think for a lot of them it is a struggle, and I think it's really good if they could try and develop an interest before they retire or a plan, because then these guys are such creatures of habit. Everything's routine, right? The bus is at 11:30 and your game's here, and then you got to stretch, and then you got to do this, then we're going here. Like they're such creatures of habit that when that all of a sudden vanishes, I think a lot of them are a little bit lost and they do struggle. I'll give you an example. Chris Tanev is taking courses right now. He's getting a degree in finance, so he's studying
Oh,
while he's on the bus and between games. So he's already thinking ahead, and he has a plan of what he's interested in beyond hockey. And I think it's partly that's due to age, but I think it's in their best interest if when they get to the latter half of the career, if they start thinking about that. I get it. If you're 21, your life's hockey. You're eat, sleep, breathe it. You're just trying to maximize your prime. But towards the end, I think it's good if you start thinking about, okay, what's next? Because yeah, you might have a lot of money in the bank, but there's a lot of hours in the day to fill. And once that round of golf's over, what are you doing? And I think it's just, as humans, we need to be engaged in something. But yeah, I mean, it is very interesting because you're right in that you're probably never going to have the highs that you've had, right? Even if you're a successful businessman, or even if you got in and were a GM, like Steve Yzerman, if he wins the cup as a GM, is that going to be as exhilarating as lifting it as a player? Probably not. Yeah.
yeah. Are you worried about your own future that way?
No, no, I'm okay. Uh, yeah,
You're
I
okay.
mean, I don't know. I'm living in the now. I sometimes I worry about, well, the state of media isn't exactly,
Right.
there could be layoffs at any moment, and I could be one of them. But I've survived through much worse jobs, so I'm just trying to enjoy this one.
An interesting thing, I heard Gretzky in an interview. I actually really enjoy his interviews because he always comes across with stories, which I really appreciate. I find that most hockey players or even ex-hockey players, they've been trained to be monosyllabic and really not saying, well, we played a 200-foot game, eh? Well, yeah, that's good. Great. Gretzky told a story that oh my gosh, it slipped my mind. I was following up on a point that you made.
Okay,
Okay, we'll have to come back to that and perhaps even edit it out. My friend asked me to ask you the following. I remember the Gretzky thing. An interviewer asked Gretzky, you must have been so secure in your position on your teams, and hockey must have been so nice for you because of that. You just knew where you were going to be the next day. Gretzky responded by saying, no, I always thought they were going to cut me because there's guys behind me who want my job just as much as I wanted it. And I thought, really, Wayne, that's what you thought? Are all hockey players, do they have that level of insecurity?
I think, I don't know about all, but like, I don't think Austin Matthews is worried about getting cut. He's a pretty confident guy. I don't think Matthew Tkachuk's worried about getting cut. But for sure, the guys that are healthy scratched occasionally have that. Like if you're Bobby McMahon, I think you do have a little bit of that.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a mental trick, right? Like in Gretzky's case, it's probably a mental trick to keep him driven. He has to think that way, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Good one. What do you think of Nice?
I think he's phenomenal.
I love him too.
I think we were talking a bit about the mental side of the game. I think he has the mentality for a big market and for high pressure. I think he's just thinks very simply. I think he's a perfect player for this coach and for this GM. I think he sees the game the same as Berube, and I think Berube has gotten the most out of him. Straight lines, lots of physicality. He's given him more opportunity in terms of power play and first line. His minutes shot up, and then he's rewarded his coach with just some phenomenal play. He's fearless, confident and fearless, strong. Yeah, and he's a really nice guy to talk to too. Like he's not philosophical, but he's firm in his beliefs and he's honest. Like if they have a bad game, he'll tell you. He won't try and sugarcoat it. And I love that. Like as an interviewer, I love it when you feel like you're getting the real opinion of the person you're talking to and not some sort of spin.
Who's one of the most fascinating Leafs to talk to? Who's eclectic? Who's somewhat philosophical? Just tells great stories.
On the current Leafs, who's good? I really like Steven Lorentz. I think he has good perspective. It's funny, like often it's either older guys, like I'd say Chris Tanev as well. Guys who've been on multiple teams. I really like talking to because they've seen different rooms. They've been in different cities. They've seen, they don't only know one thing. And then guys that were never drafted are usually good. Because their journey hasn't been necessarily easy. They appreciate it more. Lorentz's appreciation for what he has is off the charts, and he's really bubbly and friendly and engaging. I get it. They're hockey players. They got to have a game face on. But Lorentz is the only Leaf in my whole time that has seen me on the other side of the parking lot at practice and been like, hey, like he's just a bubbly guy. So you want to talk to him, you want to engage him. And then, he's insightful when you ask him about other players. So I really like him. I love talking to Jason Spezza when he was a Leaf, Mark Giordano, usually the older guys that kind of appreciate it. They know their time's winding down. They have more stories. A 21-year-old doesn't have a big bank of stories yet, right?
You know who seems like a nice fellow, and I actually appreciate his interviews as well, is Wall, the goalie.
Yes, he's very thoughtful. He has a unique perspective on life. Yeah. He's big into meditation. He's really big in the mental side of the game, really tries to stay away from his phone. He thinks about your question and gives you a thoughtful response. For a young guy, he seems like an old soul. I really like talking to Joseph Woll. That's a good one. I probably should have mentioned him off the top too.
Yeah, I got a sense of that old soul thing as well.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today has been Luke Fox. He's a writer. He writes about the Leafs an awful lot. That's what he does for his work. At the top of the show, I read you a couple pieces or lines, excerpts from what he has written. I want to do the same thing here. The Maple Leafs power play, once a symphony of crisp passes and laser shots, became a dirge in the 2025 playoffs. A measly 10% conversion rate against the Panthers penalty kill told the tale of a team outmaneuvered. Luke Fox dissected it. There's a comment here as well. This is from AI. Marner's hesitation, Matthews misfires, Tavares' predictable slot battles. It's as if the Leafs forgot how to weaponize their man advantage. In a series defined by inches, their power play was a mile off the mark. That's one piece that you wrote. Do you remember that?
No.
Fair enough.
I write a lot about the Leafs.
Here's another piece.
But I appreciate the fact that you dug this up.
I love your writing, man. It's interesting. The greatest sports writers to me in history have the ones who haven't just written prose in a way which is rote, but whether these metaphors come to you quickly or not, they're really nicely thought out. Like, I think you're a bright guy.
Thanks.
You strike me as being a smart man. When Anthony Stolarz went down in the second round, the Maple Leafs net became a revolving door of doubt. His injury exposed the fragility of the Toronto couldn't hide as backup goaltenders faltered against Florida's onslaught. Luke continues. Stolarz wasn't just a goaltender. He was the spine of a team that leaned on his calm to weather playoff storms. Without him, the Leafs didn't just lose games. They lost their swagger, their belief, their season. Oh, nice. Wonderful writing. Are you writing a book? Are you going to write a book?
I wrote a book in my previous life called Ice-T Shot Me in the Face and 11 Other Stories About Rap Music.
Yes,
before I got into sports writing as my main job, mostly what I did was music writing, mostly rap music. So I've thought about writing a sports book. We'll see. We'll see.
You're a great writer.
I kind of I really like the immediacy of this just happened, or I just talked to this person, and I can get it out and
Right.
people can read it right away and it feels fresh. The book process is an arduous one.
It is.
And we'll see. Maybe somewhere down the road.
You know who wrote a great book is Ron McLean. You may want to take a
Yeah,
look at that.
yeah, I've read it. Yeah, no, he's a fabulous writer. Yeah,
Well, he's a very, very smart
and
man.
he's a great guy. He's a great guy too.
Yeah, Ron's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
I was a CEO of a Jewish humanitarian organization, which I started up. And Ron would come down every year for many years and he would teach a class to homeless or near homeless people.
Really?
Basically, yeah. Oh, Ron's a lovely human being. Oh, yes. Um, in conclusion, the reason I do this show is to inspire people. And I think this has been an inspiring interview because I like the way you approach your wares, your career, your family, the players. You do it in a very passionate way. And I think that people who want to grow, the most important thing for them, for anyone, I would argue, is to find their passion. It's to find that thing that makes them rock in the world. Do you want to add to that, Luke, in conclusion, just inspiring people as to how they can find their...
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I just agree with you 100%. Like I'm a firm believer that, you know, it's an old saying, like if you find a job that you love, then you'll never work a day in your life.
Yes.
So I have always done jobs that I want to do, and it's not been about what's going to pay me the most money. And I have friends that make way more money than me, but they don't love their jobs, and as a result, they are sometimes a bit jealous. Oh, you get to do this, you get to do this. I was like, yeah, but you make X amount more than me, and they're like, yeah, but you know, they don't feel fulfilled by that.
Yes.
Whereas I feel very fulfilled by my work, and you know, I'm sure my wife would like it if I made a bit more money, but I don't hate getting up and putting on a pot of coffee and going to work. So
good for you, man. Good for you.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of inspiring people, I just say, like, follow what you like to do and don't worry about the other stuff.
Good for you. Do people compliment you on your writing?
Yeah, sometimes. And I also get ripped. I don't know if you ever look at the comments or the replies on Twitter. It's a mixed bag. But yeah, no, I have had compliments, and it means a lot. But it means a lot because I put a lot of effort into it, right?
Yes, I know.
I try and take pride in my work. So yeah, no, like, I mean, you inviting me on this show is a compliment. So
well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been lovely talking to you. And I would suggest very strongly, my mother taught me and my siblings when we were little. We would watch her and she would read an article in the Kitchener-Waterloo Record, and she would really appreciate what the person wrote, or she wouldn't like what they wrote. She would promptly pick up a lot of in those days and dial, the Kitchener Record and ask for the journalist and either tell them, hey, that was a terrific piece. Well done. Thank you so much. Often. Or if she was upset with it, then she would tell them that as well. But, I've heard from so many journalists throughout my own history as a writer and podcaster and so on, that a lot of people do not respond, especially when it's really well written. Yeah, we might get pissed off and say, oh, I'm disgusted by that, da-da-da. But I suggest to the listeners today, pick up the phone, man, or whatever that is, the text, and tell the journalist, hey, that is a really fine piece. The reason I bought Luke Fox onto my show is because when I was reading your stuff, I really enjoyed it as a reader. I really did.
Oh, thanks.
I can see the effort that you put into it. So
yeah. You and my mom. You and my mom.
Yeah, exactly. It's always
text
that.
me every once in a while,
yeah. And tell your mom I send my regards. I love the lady. All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching and for listening. I'm really delighted that you spent your time with us and that you were part of this interview, which I think was wonderful. So many of us are Leaf fans and hockey fans, and I think you got some really interesting insight into the game, into the players, and what motivates us, our Toronto Maple Leafs, or causes them problems in terms of their development and getting to the Stanley Cup. So until we meet again, as they say in Yiddish, Sei gesund, which means Go in health. I look forward to being with you. Thank you so much, Luke Fox, and we will see you again soon.